being assaulted by the legislator there, and also giving just a spate of other attacks that the staff have really undergone through. That is a story you want to follow on page 6 and 7. But nonetheless, civility should take preeminence when we come to public affairs, and that is not tolerable as far as the legislator is concerned. Faith's Budapest promise. That story continues on page 48. We eagerly wait to see how that will fare. Let's move on to see what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Court deals Ruto a blow on new taxes. That is what we have as a splash this morning. Finance Act, reprieve for taxpayers opposed to new law that will hit their pockets hard. Hold your horses. The High Court has extended orders blocking the implementation of the Finance Act 2023 for another 5 days. A move that will see the taxman fail to collect up to 5.78 billion shillings, even as Omtata trained his guns on April Bose, saying also they were in contempt of court orders. This is the April row. Senator Okiya Omtata wants the court to punish April MD Daniel Kiptoo after the agency adjusted fuel prices upwards despite being served with a court order, of which they say they were not really served. Well, it appears here he says they were served. You can read all the details on page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. A village mourns the ones we lost. And these are the families of these are the dear relatives of the lives that were lost there in Londiani. We are united in grief and sorrow. These deaths have numbed us. They have numbed us all, says Paul Kirui, a resident of Londiani, summing up the feeling and horror here after Friday's night accident that left 52 people dead. And you can follow the story on page 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation. Just seeing some of the faces here, young lives that were lost in that tragic accident. Pensions. Treasury to go after counties over unpaid statutory deductions. Treasury and KRA planning to deduct the 91 billion shillings outstanding arrears directly from the county's equitable share of revenue. And that is also bound to bring out some debate. And reopening of Somalia border to be delayed. And Warden who faked the rescue of a girl he defiled jail. That is the story that you want to follow on page 2 of the Daily Nation this morning. Still, there is also the TSC story advertising 20,000 posts for intern teachers in primary and junior secondary school. That is the Daily Nation. Star. There is a study now that is revealing that cesarean section, all sections in Kenya, breach the World Health Organization limits. It raises prospects of overuse of procedure, which carries risks for babies and moms as well. And many of them that are in the family way or have been there, they know this very well, that sometimes it doesn't really warrant for you to go through a cesarean section, but you're advised to actually take the cesarean section route. And this is just for the benefit of the hospitals. And this is what now the World Health Organization is raising concern of. It is too much, and it's also has breached the given limits. That is the story that you want to follow. 15% is the upper limit. Number has doubled since the last survey in 2014. And there are culprit hospitals that are known for this as well. You might be familiar with that. IBC panel ignores Raila proceeds to recruit Paul Chiefs. IBC panel ignores Raila. It proceeds to recruit Paul Chiefs. And they've threatened to actually scupper this particular process. And we are actually now in a pickle as far as IBC is concerned, knowing that there's some by-elections which are upcoming, and they're in a dire straits right now on what to do, because there are no commissioners right now, and there were court orders that need to be complied with, and so this is a big crisis as far as IBC commissioners is concerned. Lawmaker Mbai is released on 50,000 bond, and Shakahola Deathfield is owned by the government. Shakahola Deathfield is owned by government. This is a new revelations there. The government yesterday was again pushed into a tight corner over the Shakahola cult death, as it was revealed that the state was firmly in charge of the land where the starvation and deaths occurred. Mackenzie headed the count. The state has been criticized for lax security and not monitoring the forest properly, and Amnesty International in this. This is very interesting because the government seems not to be aware that the 800 expanse land, the 800 acres was owned by Mackenzie. And right now they're finding it's their own land, and Mackenzie was only a squatter. This is circus. Professor Kichuro Wanaina.
Morning, how are you doing?
Very well.
Why do you start the issue of land so early?
Of course, every parcel of land here in the country is government. But when you asking probing questions regarding 800 acres of land that Mackenzie is owning, and everyone seems not to know where the documents are, then you come and say it is government lands.
With a light touch the ball.
Yes.
In one instance, a friend of mine met the late Archbishop Mwanandingi Mwananzeki at the airport. And there was the issue of land being emotive. So when he asked, the Archbishop said, "My son, you know land is where we come from and where we are buried." The friend said, "No wonder. We're already thinking of death, even when we're still living. We're dead while we still live." So land is so emotive. But obviously, we would ask the same. Government, with all the machinery and the technology, the surveillance, really should know. If we don't know, then we need to do something about our surveillance and our aerial systems, the satellites and all that.
Absolutely.
And so they're asking, I think Amnesty International is on it. They're saying the government should be held responsible for this eventuality in Shakahola because they were a bit lax.
There is a responsibility on the government to protect the citizen. And therefore, Amnesty International is spot on. My take is perhaps they would even supported government in trying to find out what happened in it. But the government has been a bit, no, we'll deal with it. But it's important to have somebody from out because it needs to unfold because those deaths are too many, you know, and therefore we need to go down to it and find what was all this that somebody convinced us that you starve and you go to heaven. And as we pointed out, he doesn't start with himself. If heaven is that great, why don't you starve yourself first and then we'll catch up with you there? So, but on the piece of land, the government is a custodian of a piece of land.
Yes.
In that sense, therefore, if this land seems to have no ownership, then the government does. But I think what Shem is saying, with all the technology, with all the machinery, they should actually know who knows the land. If they don't, then we are ready to go and settle there and start producing food.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So if I go settle there, and of course I was given to understand some nuances of the law. If I settle there for 12 years,
It becomes yours.
it becomes mine.
Right.
12 years on a trot, successfully, without any interruption, then it becomes my land. They cannot come and tell me, oh, this is not my land. I've been there, staying there for 12 good years. It's good to see James Mureo as well, the chair of Micro Small Enterprises Authority. You missed the entrance here.
Yes.
You've been coming here. How come today you missed it?
My phone and my driver went just past. Then when I looked up,
The airport.
we were heading to.
You were heading to Mlolongo.
We were.
Where now did you turn?
We just turned under the bypass, the bypass, and then had to go all the way back.
From the city Cabanas.
No,
You
we
were-
were past Cabanas. Me, I was on
What,
the
were you on the
front,
expressway or you just
On the
kept-
expressway.
Oh, the expressway.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So anyway.
I know. Yeah, you know the first one. Many
you turn.
of them.
If
Many
you
have
pass
missed
here,
the
where
mark
do you
as well.
turn?
We went past.
You get out of that, then Cabanas, you go up, and up
Yes.
again, then the capital center.
Yes, and again back. I had to do this run twice, but that's okay.
You're here.
I'm here.
You're here, nonetheless. Good to see you. It's been a
Yes.
while. I know you've got a lot to really speak, especially on the
But on
micro
this,
and
on
small
this,
enterprises
yes,
as well.
But on this Shakahola story, you know, Dibal, I think it's sometimes, and I'm not being too government, but I think sometimes the government is bashed for no good reason. Shakahola was a scheme mooted by all these guys who were involved, without government necessarily knowing exactly. There are so many churches that are all over the country. And what was going on at Shakahola was a horror itself. And really, okay, I do understand that the government should have its feelers everywhere. But this thing was done so well. It's under the religious cover. So really undoing it. And then when you see, we all have children. Sometimes your children leave you in the sitting room, and what they do behind you there, while you're the parent and you're supposed to be responsible, he's just thrown a stone and broken your neighbor's window. And he was there with you saying he's a nice boy, but what he's doing outside there. So sometimes I think it's good. It is mischief, and mischief is mischief, whichever way you look at it. These guys schemed things, they extorted money. I mean, there's a big money scheme that should have been spotted if only the people, you can see what's happening. The sorry state is, even the people who are being rescued, they are saying, leave us to die. This is what, because they have been indoctrinated with religion. And religion is as motive as the land issue. Right. When you touch my religion, you're touching a raw nerve. And it really is, it's a very confused state of affairs. I feel sorry that we've lost so many people. And sadly, this morning we should actually be empathizing with the Londiani people who died of a serious accident, while other people are committing suicide, slow suicide. These people wanted to leave, and their lives were cut short by this Londiani accident. My heart goes out to them, really.
Indeed, indeed. And of course, the knee-jerk reaction from government saying now you should install cameras so that we might deter accidents.
That's the
I found that to be, should I say, the dumbest thing that has ever been suggested, because how will that actually prevent accidents? Because that is not preventative, it is reactive, just to follow up what really happened at the end of the day.
Debal, allow me to join James and Professor Wainaina in condoling the families of the victims, the Londiani victim. And given that that vehicle was heading to Rwanda I consider my second home. We eulogize with the families, like we do also with the family of Professor Michere Mugo.
Yes.
As we do also to those who have died in this place at the coast that's being talked about. Debal, I work very closely with the Interreligious Council of Kenya. That's the apex organ for the religious community, both the Christian, Muslim, Hindu, and all the rest. And while I am not authorized to speak on its behalf, but I have associated with them so closely that I know, and as somebody who was a deacon in the Adventist church when I was younger.
You are a deacon?
Yes. I don't think any religion, proper religion, would condone the kind of thing that has happened in Shakahola. So I'm hoping that the investigation that started, I didn't personally think a commission of inquiry was necessary. Just criminal investigation should have been able to establish what happened, because clearly for people to lose lives in this manner is utterly, in this age and era, is utterly unacceptable. So we are hoping that government will get down to the bottom of it so that the culprits, whether it was human trafficking or body part sale or whatever it was, let's get to the bottom of it, and it should never happen again on our land.
On our land, indeed. And of course, talking about government, there's a very interesting editorial cartoon also in the Standard today. We have, if you may look at it in the Standard, a gentleman is talking about the housing scheme and governments and lands. And here, he's actually on phone, and he's saying, listen, are you there?
I can see it.
You can see it.
I was here, so I've gone through it.
I have a perfect plan for this government housing scheme.
My mind go to the diaspora. You know, they are told there is perfect land here.
Right.
Yeah, well, so you can comment on it as well. Now that there is opportunity for the housing scheme as well, we have all schemers who are plotting maybe some mischievous schemes up their collective sleeves as far as land is concerned. And we all know about the cemetery saga in this country, the Langata cemetery, and the debate around it and how it was hived off. I don't know how that particular case went down the tubes. We had one of the cabinet secretaries embroiled in that as well. but he seems to have shaken off that particular skunk from him.
It's when I saw it first, my mind went to Langata, and then of course now we know what he's talking about. And Shem is here. It has been a really an area we need to put our finger on, particularly with the diaspora, when they buy a piece of land and it's all this kind of stuff. I'm not quite sure that, to me, the insensitivity of this fella to the graves here is something we should not. It's like land, it's everything. I did it, wouldn't matter what is there. But the first shot in me went to what happened to the family of the ones who are buried here. And therefore it will be very difficult for, but Kenyans are there. I saw Langata perhaps coming in. I do remember somebody currently hiring.
But Prof, you're overthinking. It is so basic. Don't overbrain it.
He's paid to think, you know.
Yeah, and I recall, there's somebody right now, when he's a minister for local government. There's a piece of land which was being sold to have the cemetery or something like that. And it went the same way in terms of being clubbed. Now I'm thinking.
It is it is meant to be on a lighter touch. All right. Shem, what do you think about it? And
the BAL,
just speaking basically on the houses, because we'll run on with the story of the Finance Act reason.
On the one hand, I had a government officer say that there's a lot of idle land belonging to government institutions, the SAGAs, the semi-autonomous government agencies, that should be availed for development. In that regard, actually, a number of diasporians, now that Professor was mentioning, have been saying, look, we are happy to put in investments in secure assets. If you give us land, we'll be happy to put in resources, identify additional resources and develop them. So when I had somebody talk of idle government land, I was pleased. But when it gets to the stage of cemetery, that's another separate issue, really. If somebody is betting on selling off our cemeteries where our loved ones have rested, that's taking the joke a little too far. But talking of it, the BAL, for the next 2 years, our major preoccupation as Kenya Diaspora Alliance is restoring trust. Diasporas have been conned, even by families in the past. And one of the things that we're doing, we are just completing at the moment, is identifying what we call remittance operators of choice. We will soon be doing that also for realtors of choice, so that diasporas, when they deal with companies, we'll tell them there is this X and Y number of companies that if you deal with them, we can vouch for them.
Thank you.
And we can vouch for your properties as well.
All right, thank you. All right, let's rope in Bill Okero, fresh from the mosque. We always appreciate when he wakes up and prays for us. At least we begin our day refreshed. But it's way too cold. I don't know how else we manage it in the mosque. Unless in the mosque now they've modernized it. There's some heaters.
No, it's really bad.
It's really bad.
When you are trying to take wudu, the water is so cold. That's why you see me heavily dressed because of the weather.
We should advise the sheikh now that at least we'll be having warm water. You know, to wash our hands,
I tell you,
our feet as well.
But the Nairobi weather is unpredictable. So today is freezing, tomorrow you find it's...
Right.
Yeah. So about the graves?
Not really.
No, oh, sorry.
But if you want to chime in on the graves as well.
No, I think my colleagues have put it well.
Yeah. Okay. But good to see you as well. We have a raft of issues to discuss about the concerns that have been raised by KRA that they're not going to get their revenues, I think 57.6 billion shillings because of this particular halting by the courts of the finance.
That's false,
yes, and then we have the Auditor General as well, who has pitched in to actually challenge this Finance Act as well. What is the way forward? So in terms of budgetary, in terms of running operations of the government, will there be any halting of this or affectedness of this? as they're putting it. I think, let me just read the story, then of course we shall settle down and discuss it. And the message is not so fast. Slow you roll, because 5 days after the Finance Act 2023 was first suspended, the High Court has extended those interim orders until Monday next week. Justice Mugere Thande ordered further freeze on the implementation of the Finance Act during the first hearing of a case by Busia Senator Okiya Omtata challenging the implementation of the Act. KTN's David Muthoka kicks off, of course, this morning with that particular story.
Wednesday morning, the legal showdown over the Finance Act 2023 between the government and various petitioners, among them Busia Senator Okiya Omtata, kicked off at the High Court before Lady Justice Mugure Thande. Hundreds of members of public, lawyers, petitioners, as well as the respondents attended the Finance Act case that was being heard virtually. It was expected at the end of the hearing, the judge will rule on whether the Finance Act 2023 will stay suspended or whether the suspension will be lifted, paving the way for its implementation by the government. And so, the government side that was on Friday last week dealt a blow after the court shockingly suspended the Finance Act, wasted no time in seeking the removal of the suspension. According to Attorney General Justin Muturi, who's been represented by, among other lawyers, former Attorney General Professor Githu Muigai, following last week's suspension of the Finance Act and any continued suspension, the government now risks not having enough money to finance some of its crucial operations, among them payment of July salaries to civil servants. The prayer was met with fierce opposition from the petitioners who want the act to remain suspended and eventually declared unconstitutional. The petitioners also asked the court to find Energy and Petroleum Authority EPRA CEO Daniel Kiptoo in contempt of court for increasing fuel prices by approximately 13 shillings over the weekend, despite the court suspending the implementation of the act. The court gave the EPRA CEO 2 days to file a response to the contempt of court charges before making its decision. The court further directed that the suspension that will have otherwise lapsed on Wednesday, July 5th, will remain in place until Monday, when Justice Mugure Thande will determine whether the Finance Act 2023 will stay suspended until Omtata's case is determined or whether the government can implement the act as the case proceeds. David Muthoka, KTN News, Nairobi.
Right, many thanks indeed, David Muthoka. And we just want to look keenly, slice and dice the issue. What is the matters at stake as far as this bill is, or the act is concerned? Will the government be adversely affected in terms of operations of the Finance Act? Let me just begin with you, Bill Okero. On that particular note, there has been that argument that, even the revenue collection will be affected. We're going to lose 57.6 billion shillings in this particular period that this has been halted. Does the passing of this Finance Act in any way also renders the previous acts redundant? And so there is no act?
No, I think the lawyers for the government obviously are misleading in that respect. Finance Act is an annual bill that is done. And the objective of the bill is to raise additional revenue for the government. And it's very clear that this particular finance bill is intended to raise about 300 or so billion. Actually, initially 211 billion. I think later, when they submitted after those amendments, they said the figure will go up to 300 billion. So that's only the revenue that will be affected for the whole year. But the rest of the tax measures which are already in force are legally binding. There's an act of parliament, So there's nothing about that. So if you look at 300 billion for a whole year, that is about less than a few hundred. It's about a few hundred millions, 700-800 million a day maximum. If you look at it that way. But
bill is on. Whatever we had for 2020, 22-23, it's continuing anyway.
So I think that's completely misleading. And the expenditure of the government is approved through the appropriations bill, which is to come. That's the one that determines the expenditure. So this one has nothing to do with expenditure as well. So I think that whole argument is, of course, to try and get the courts to...
It does not really fly, yeah?
It won't fly, and I think both sides have put in the argument in that respect. So in my view, look, the courts have the powers to all together say, okay, this thing is not a good thing, or did not comply with the Constitution, and render the whole thing unconstitutional. You go back to the drawing board. So the courts have those powers. I think the government should not look at only the few days that this matter is in court. They should look at the possibility that the court has the powers to throw out, particularly these issues regarding amendments that have been sneaked in, at the committee stage, or even after the committee stage. It happens in this country when the parliament has finalized everything and it goes to the AG's office for final, whatever, they kind of tweak it, and in law, the commas and the dots and the
it's important.
It makes a huge difference. So it's very interesting argument, and I don't think the courts will be in a hurry to dispose of, because there are arguments that there are some new items that have been sneaked into the bill after either the parliament has passed or just around the time the final committee was looking at.
After the parliament passed it, it's...
Yeah, at the ages level, they do. Oh, yes.
Yep.
So that is not really the voice of the people.
No.
It is, you take advantage.
So when I look
it's
at the
sort of an
argument
omnibus.
Tato was raising, he said there are about 2-3 items that have been brought into the bill, which were not
even
debated or even subjected to public participation. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these arguments will go in the court.
And that's the issue of trust, that we know we subjected it to, Kenyans have debated it, we've had the finance committee amending some of them, and then after that we have some dubious, jiggery-pokery way of actually
tackling it. That's what I talked about, mischief. Mischief. Keeping a finger on mischief is very difficult. But let me just weigh in on this, because you see, the finance bill, like Biro has said, is really supposed to help government to figure out how to raise additional revenue. But from where I see it, and Debal, we've had this conversation here before. My biggest problem is KRA sleeping on the job. Because really KRA looks at how they can tax the people they already know and leaving out so many other people out there who are not paying tax. The other day we're looking at statistics, and KRA is only collecting taxes for about 3 million Kenyans.
6.7 the other day.
They have taken that, then they are working very hard. But how many Kenyans are not paying tax? And they are the first ones to castigate the government and ask for additional services. We want roads here. Roads are not built by just word of mouth. They are built with resources. So while the government has that responsibility, the Kenyans have the responsibility to pay taxes. So we should all be able to pay taxes, but having paid taxes, the taxes then must be used for the correct purposes for which we are paying taxes, i.e. the development of the whole country holistically. But what we see, Debal, is very few people are actually paying taxes. Very few people.
But why,
and you're trying,
why are we not paying taxes?
Because the fellows in the Times Towers sit there and expect, because they have your PIN, they will follow you when you sell timber. They are not able to broaden the taxes, the tax collection. They are deepening it. Because they know where you are, they'll pin you down. But there are many Kenyans out there who are not paying taxes, and that's a fact.
And so we fault KRA for that?
Yeah, KRA is the one that they should not just sit there. They should re-engineer their tax collection systems. They're just sitting there because they have used the PIN as a base for collecting taxes. They know where you are. You sell your timber, they come for you. Because you put some money in the bank, because you have your PIN, they'll come for you. But really what they should do is broaden, move out there and see who else is not paying taxes before they burden. Because you're trying to make the pyramid stand on the tip and support all this. It should be on the base. That's the truth.
I don't agree. I don't. You know.
You don't have to agree. But that's my opinion. That's my opinion.
This issue. We looked at it recently when the president raised this matter. In the most developed countries, in the U.S., the percentage of Americans who are paying taxes is 40%. The same thing in UK is around 40-something%. I mean, in Kenya, about 15%. But let me tell you, it's not.
Take it to 40.
It's not. I mean, you can't because of one reason. In those countries, the level of development, the level of industrialization, the level of income people who are employed is much higher. You have a country here where the total employed in modern sector is 3 million. And so you look at the size of your economy. This is a largely 80% subsistence economy. People are surviving on their own little. You are the chairman of the Juakali, and you know that MSMEs, and you know what they make. So the reason why they have, by the way, that has been the policy of the government the last 15-20 years to broaden. And that's why it's been growing. The number last week, and they announced that the total number of Kenyans who filed returns are now 6.7 million. That's significant. I mean, when you compare to some of the countries in the region, it's still in hundreds of thousands. Yeah. So I think there is need to obviously broaden. That's what they've been doing. That's been the official policy. But again, you must look at the circumstances. We cannot compare with you cannot say everyone with a PIN. Everyone with an age of 18 should have a PIN, as the president said once, or everyone with a mobile should pay tax. I think tax is about income. So if you're not earning income, you can pay. But
a huge constituency.
But I think we are discussing some of those things today, isn't it? On SEZs, and so forth.
Yes.
There are legal ways.
There are a lot of things.
There are legal ways in which people can avoid paying taxes.
You have to go there.
So when he talks about tax avoidance, I think also with the special economic zones, this is a way the legal way.
Ebal, when we talk of PINs, perhaps it begins from how many Kenyans have PINs. Because I don't think they're probably not more than 30% at best. Those who are paying tax, as a mathematician I've computed, is about 13% of Kenyans, to be precise. Obviously, working towards maybe even doubling that to 26% should be the goal of any government. But it's got to be done in a manner that complies with the law, and in particular with regard to this finance bill. The fact that court decisions are sacrilege should be something that the current administration should not forget, particularly considering the contentions we had at election time. Had it not been for the courts, this country would probably be somewhere else now. So I was hoping and praying, and I think what some of us complimented the Kenya Kwanza administration for when it came to power, when it first appointed those 6 appeal court judges. We thought a strong message was being sent that we are a government which will respect the rule of law. So I think in terms of complying with the decisions of the court, that's key. I remember in the previous administration, I'm one of those who called for the then Attorney General being either shown the door or resigning because he was misadvising the government. I have a lot of respect for my former Speaker, J.B. Muturi. But the way things are going from the time Kenya Kwanza came into parliament, I'm beginning to question the quality of advice that is giving the government. In my view, even this aspect of going to court on other issues, appealing and so on, I think President Dr. Ruto should find very fine advice, particularly legal advice, in how to move this country forward. Lastly, in that regard, it's often said that what moved Singapore forward was that the best people were in government. In Kenya, best people don't go to government.
Of course.
So I want to plead with the government to make sure that meritocracy and getting the finest, if it's lawyers, get the most finest to be the ones to advise government. But for now, the quality of legal advice is wanting. Lastly,
the best mind goes to academia and consultancy.
Rather sadly, they need to go both ways because
I'm holding myself.
They produce not saying that. But the Honorable Senator Okiya Omtata, I think, did caution. Remember, he had this jovial conversation with the president when he was in Busia, when he was saying that the president even assisted him once when he was filing a court, gave him 30,000 shillings. By that time, he only had 3,000 shillings. He said, Excellency President, let's not take this matter to court. Let's just do things according to the law.
Correct.
I think for me, I support that position, doing things as per the law. And I wouldn't want to hold it on the president at the moment. I hold it more on the quality of the legal advice.
The quality of the legal advice. Yeah. Okay. Still on the legal advice, if there is the issue that he says he will appeal as well, that the judgment that was made by the High Court regarding the CS's positions, the 50 positions that were unconstitutional, he's challenging that as well. I don't know what you may think of that. Does he have to really speak because he's the AG, and so he has to sort of seem to be having some motions from his office, regardless of the sort of challenge that is coming regarding the CSs as well? And we can discuss also the unconstitutionality about the advisors. You're talking advisors to the cabinet.
In my view, it's embarrassing government. That's what I would sub it.
It's embarrassing government.
Because there have been so many cases, in a very short span, the past 10 months, where government seems not to be getting right with regard to the courts. And I don't think government would say this court was a hostile one. From the word go, this was a very friendly court. But I stand to be guided.
Even Mogore is a very non-hostile lady.
Sure.
Those who know her, the judge.
Looking at that cartoon as well, you can see
with all the eggs
in their faces. They still want to appeal. We appeal.
But that was expected, that to appeal. But what is important, and we did have a touch on it last week, and they said, yes, the Constitution is very clear, but in terms of really following it, it's a different ballgame. And that's what we are seeing here, that is very of the Constitution. My take is that, yes, if government, I would appeal really and take it to the conclusion, to the end, in terms of really getting to the
to exhaust all
the ways,
the avenues that you might want to challenge.
My mind takes me back to that the government, through the president and his officers and the whole lot, thought through this. And he has able people in terms of interpretation of the Constitution. And therefore, there could be a case which the AG Mutuli is bringing, represented by another AG, former, yes. And let it go through the process. That's law. That's given in the law. Let's go through the process. Yeah.
Okay, Bill Okero, you want to comment on this, or Reo? Because aside from the advisors that we saw, there is another stranger also that has been attending those meetings, and we wonder what part of the Constitution does he get accommodated? And this is the head of public service, because the head of public service is not part of the 14 limit or the 20 and above. Is it 24? Right, that should not be beyond the threshold that has been 22 that has been actually put in the Constitution. And the head of public service is not a creation of this Constitution. It's an act that was passed in Parliament, as it were. I don't know if that also will now bring another debate, because we've had Felix Koskei sitting in this cabinet.
I think we did discuss last week, and for me, I think the issue of the cabinet and the strangers in the cabinet it's about the role and how in what capacity they are sitting there. And I gave examples in UK and other countries where political representatives of party can sit in the cabinet to advise. Experts or other civil servants do attend even the cabinet meeting in UK, but their role is in attendance. Like in any meeting where you are attending a board of directors meeting, you're not a member of the board, but you are there, on invitation. If that is the capacity in which they are sitting, and this is on ad hoc basis,
Yeah.
But if you
Do
are
they
sworn in,
if they are sworn in,
if you are sworn in to be part and parcel of the institution,
that's a
called
different
cabinet,
kettle of fish altogether.
I think it's a different kettle of fish, and I'm sure it's before the courts, and the courts will determine. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, but, if you look at that particular, if you are sworn in, I mean, that's a diametrically different. But if they're seeking an expert opinion, it's a one-off.
But I would imagine anyone who goes to cabinet to present something must be sworn in for the purpose of secrecy.
Yes, secrecy.
There is oath of secrecy when you have to, because everything there is deemed to be confidential. Although nowadays, everything that happens in that house on the hill is known.
but the nuances from the communique that was coming from the president is that these advisors, they are in the level of the cabinet secretary level, right? I mean, that gives a very different connotative nuances from that particular communique, how you decipher it.
That plus the fact that if they are going to sit in there on full-time basis, they become part and parcel of the institution called cabinet. Then obviously that's a different ball game.
Right. Real.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. But he also serves, I think, as a secretary to the cabinet. So he's the one who sort of takes the information that is being discussed there. This first the Felix Koskei.
No, we have the secretary to the cabinet.
No, there is a secretary to the cabinet.
There is a Masi who's supposed to be doing
a
that.
different institution.
But head of public service. He's head of public service. So a lot of what is being discussed in cabinet, I'm sure, has an implementation matrix that needs to be looked at. So I don't see that as a big. I think the other additional
But
names
the
that have
constitution
been
should be
floated.
our plumb line. That's what we should follow. If the constitution
You know,
does
I
not
think
give us
that's
Can I tell you this?
That's your basis, Deba, that
Yeah.
the constitution is very clear.
Yeah.
So what is all this
So
now?
what is all this? Because we don't need to slice it away. If the constitution, that should be the final arbiter.
Can I say
Not,
this?
yes. Let me finish.
Kenya sat in all cabinet meetings in the previous regime. He was there. He's the one who was sort of sitting there.
Should we question, was that an illegality? Because
It's an
it was
illegality.
never raised.
Maybe I can assist the ball.
He's head of public service.
Perhaps I can assist in this regard, having been a past presidential advisor.
Oh,
You swore. You took a swore of secrecy.
Let me assist in this regard. That while I agree that there is the secretary to the cabinet, a good friend, a very fine lawyer, Masi Wanjau, formerly of Communications Authority, I would want to take it that her office, in a way, is an extended part of the office of the head of public service. So basically, she's like sitting in there at the behest of, or on behalf of course, the head of state who appointed her, but also playing some role, a residual role for the head of public service. So as a team sitting in there as secretariat, for me, I would really have no qualms with it. In terms of them being sworn in, of course, there is the issue of secrecy, oath of secrecy. In my view, it does not necessarily constitute them being part of the cabinet. But yes, whatever the case is, let's comply with what the law says, the Constitution. I only wanted to say with a light touch, when Professor keeps repeating that the Constitution is clear, the law is clear, you know, all the lawyers say the law is clear and yet they don't agree. So sometimes it's not so clear as we assume that it is. But for me, strangers being in the cabinet and being sworn in to keep secret whatever they become privy to, I don't see a terrible problem with that, as long as they are not given tasks that cabinet secretaries would perform or execute. So I would want to treat them more as part of the secretariat. But again, the matter is in court. I would be happy to see what the courts determine.
All right. Okay. Unless we...
My view,
we need to take a short break.
you can put even this, the one for what? The secretary. Secretary General is saying that he's there to advise on the manifesto. But the bottom line is probably what we need to address what the demographic and health study was bringing up. You can put whoever you want in that cabinet. But the bottom line is the Mukenya. Are we seeing the turn in terms of cost of living, their level of housing, their level of health, education? That's the bottom line. I appreciate it's very clear, but you can put whoever you want there. But the bottom question we should be asking ourselves: are Kenyans better off or not? That's to me the issue. Fine, they can provide the advice, but you don't have to be in cabinet to provide the advice in it. You can actually provide whatever you are. But fundamentally, and I keep repeating the broken record, let's focus. And we sort of got out why Kenyans are not paying taxes. Let's focus on how we can more have for production. Let's focus how we can take more the kids who can't go to school than anything else. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of sideshows in this country that we're missing the fact.
Prof, this is not a sideshow. The issue of the cabinet is a serious issue.
It's a serious issue.
You know, I think the concerns that the Kenyans who went to court have is that is the president trying to circumvent, you know, the constitution and indirectly expand his cabinet. That's why, because if individuals are there on long-term basis and they will influence the decision of the cabinet one way or the other, you know, then you know, it contravenes the constitution, because that's why a cabinet member must be vetted by parliament. There are certain statutory requirements that they must fulfill. So here you have Professor coming in as an advisor, academic affairs, sitting in there, and then he's the one who's, you know, impacting on all the decisions being made regarding education, and he's not been vetted by parliament.
And he's got his own interest.
You know, and so that's the concern Kenyans have, really, because ultimately cabinet is the one that is vested with authority to govern, you know, collectively. That's the concern.
Deval, if you look at it, there are 24 cabinet secretaries that substantively sit as cabinets. 22. Then you are the Attorney General. I think it comes in three.
President.
But, yeah. So really, those are the people with the powers to, and they are the ones who be held responsible for whatever decisions that are made in cabinet. And I don't know who said. Really, we must focus on the real issues here. And the real issues here is these 22 or 24 people or 25 who sit there with that power that they've been given by the Mwananchi and vetted through parliament are the ones we hold responsible. Anybody else who comes into that cabinet really is supporting actors. The main actors are the 24 that are there. And rightly so, the government is a very, very complex system. There are many areas that really need more support than probably the 24 people can offer. So I don't think that, the only thing is the vetting of those officers who probably will sit there, maybe not on full-time basis because they have other appointments as well, where they are running other offices, is really to ensure that they keep the secrecy of what is discussed in cabinet. Yeah.
I think it's important to clarify something here. There is the role of secretariat and there's the role of advisory. If these people are coming in as advisors, then it's ad hoc. The ordinarily advisors come in when a topic that concerns them is required. But having them sworn in at the same time is not a problem. I would only have an issue if they are permanently in cabinet. But if they are called on a need basis, I personally would have no problem. That's for advisors.
That's the clarification we sought
to
need.
Yes.
Yeah, that is what the